Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil service main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 4. Let us read out the question carefully. Discuss apathy as a negative attitude for civil servants. What can be done to positively alter apathy among civil servants? Now, if we were to read the question carefully, this question is not simply about apathy, but rather you have to talk about what negativities apathy among these civil servants can lead to. That is, what negative effects it can lead to. And once we have established the negative effects of apathy among these civil servants, then we have to talk about how to cure it, or rather how to alter it positively. We are introducing our answer with a piece of current affairs that is of relevance to this question. That is, hearing a petition on the deadly pollution in the National Capital Region, the Honorable Supreme Court lamented that the bureaucracy had developed apathy which leads to indecisiveness and inertia. And the beauty of this example is the example itself talks about the likely effects of apathy among the bureaucracy. That is, the Honorable Supreme Court has itself observed that it was the apathy among the bureaucracy, among the civil servants, that is leading to a situation where it's not going to take decision. That is, it is becoming indecisive, as well as there is some resistance to change, or for that matter inaction as well, that is inertia. Now, briefly defining apathy, our understanding is apathy is lack of concern and emotional aloofness towards issues where a sense of concern and commitment is required. That is, apathy is indeed a lack of concern where a concern is merited, where a concern is required. And moreover, it is also emotional aloofness, that is like standing aside, standing apart from, rather than being emotionally involved in something, you are standing apart from the issue, that you are behaving as if you are not involved in that issue. And it is also like a lack of concern and commitment. Moreover, it can be contrasted with empathy. Almost everyone here would have some idea of empathy, what it is. Empathy is a sense of proactive responsibility and putting oneself in other shoes. That is, when we are talking about empathy, it is the like the tendency of like trying to understand other emotions. That is, you put yourself in his or her place. Moreover, you try to take proactive steps to like cure his emotional distress, or for that matter something that is troubling him or her. Apathy among civil servants often termed bureaucratic apathy, as you can understand very well, that is apathy among civil servants has been termed bureaucratic apathy, is a negative attitude as it may manifest in many undesirable traits in a civil servant. So what are the negatives of bureaucratic apathy? First, it can lead to a tendency to do the bare minimum and not striving for excellence. That is, a civil servant who is apathetic about, you could say, his work would have very, you could say, less incentive, and in fact he would have much less motivation to go beyond the requirements of his duty. He would probably like try to go by the very formal and like the bare minimum that with which he can actually justify his or her actions, and very rarely he would try to excel his usual duties. It can also mean a lack of responsiveness, and as you can understand very well, there are some situations where responsiveness is required. For example, when some emergency is already on your head, or for that matter when there is a case like a disaster has just struck. In those cases, if there is a lack of responsiveness, it can lead to a great harm. It can also mean dehumanizing the common citizen. The common citizen is not treated as another, you could say, human being, rather than he becomes a mere statistic. It can also lead to blame shifting and lack of accountability, especially in the cases where apathy leads to something that has gone wrong. For an example, due to lack of responsiveness, if something were to go wrong, it would mean that the civil servant would try to shift the blame, or like he would try to evade accountability. Moreover, please try to appreciate this point. When there is a lack of dedication, which is one of the symptoms of apathy, it might turn into corruption. Again, the point is the compensation that we are paid for being a civil servant is much less than the market rates. Most of the people would agree that the compensation that the civil servant is paid is much less that he would have drawn if he were to work in, for an example, in the private sector. So the thing is, he should always derive some sense of satisfaction from the mere public service. And if he is not deriving this sense of satisfaction, he might try to seek gratification elsewhere, and that may manifest in various kinds of corruption, either financial or even moral. Elaborating on these points, an apathetic civil servant would not push further and find excuses to get away with doing the bare minimum. Moreover, lacking proactiveness, the system would become unresponsive to public needs. And we have already talked about some of the instances where responsiveness is needed. And if the public service becomes unresponsive, for example, in cases of some emergency, or for an example, when there is like a fear of some disaster striking, it can lead to great amount of harm. If the civil services are indifferent to the pain and privations of citizens, they might start treating the common citizen as a mere statistic. That is like dehumanizing the common citizen and the tendency to treat it as another number. If things were to go wrong due to apathy, the civil servant might resort to blame game and try to escape accountability. Then, if there is a lack of dedication to public service, which is considered a symptom of apathy, that is, lack of dedication to public service is a symptom of apathy, it might mean the civil servant seeks gratification elsewhere or other than satisfaction of serving people. This may give birth to corruption of various kinds, either financial or otherwise moral as well, for example. Now, before we go about positively altering apathy among the civil servants, let us briefly talk about the root causes of apathy. The root causes of apathy can be found in the way civil services are organized in India. Actually, many people have commented that it is in the very structure of civil services that it can lead to apathy among the civil servants. For an example, as career advancement is based on seniority, the civil servants lose the motivation for standing out through dedication. That is, he has very few incentives for standing out, or like for that matter, going beyond the demands or like the remit of his, you could say, formal service. Moreover, the organizational culture, which is bureaucratic, mechanical, and hierarchical, may impart wrong lessons among the civil servants. Please once again try to understand it. Generally, in the bureaucracy of India, that is, in the civil services of India, the young bureaucrat, the young civil servant, has much less autonomy, and he has to work according to the dictates of his seniors. And these seniors might themselves have developed apathy due to their prior experience of coming into contact with the system itself. So this is a case of negative socialization for the young civil servant. Sorry. Moreover, despite improvements, the selection process is not foolproof and cannot sieve out, that is, filter people with apathy from joining civil services for power. Actually, there may be cases where people are joining civil services not for the service of the people, but rather for the, you could say, the kick of power that comes with civil services. That is what they think. Moreover, the grievances of citizens may become a routine task. Again, this is a very, very important concept actually, That is, when you come into contact with a repeated type of grievances, that is, when it becomes a routine task for the civil servant, it might desensitize him. Actually, this has been observed in various cases. For example, those in emergency services, like in the medical profession, that when people come into contact with like same kinds of issues, people who are, all of whom are feeling some kind of pains and privations, the person, that is the service provider, sometimes might lose this, you could say, sense of empathy, this sense of emoting about the other side. This is called desensitization, and this can actually happen in the case of the civil servant as well. So the solution lies in, as we have talked about, that there is no incentive for the civil servant to go beyond the remit of his service, or like that is to pursue excellence. We should actually talk about incentivizing and rewarding good behavior, where the civil servant has displayed empathy. That is, when the civil servant has indeed gone beyond way to, for example, serve some the common public, or like when he has displayed a great deal of commitment to services, to the services of the people, there should be some mechanism to like reward or incentivize him or her, the civil servant. Then sensitivity training, we have already talked about the tendency of desensitizing. So what is required is that that is periodic sensitivity training, which should be regularly imparted, so that they are continually reminded of the expectation of proactivity and empathy that the masses have from him or her. Now coming to, we have already talked about incentivizing or rewarding good behavior. Now let us talk about negative enforcement. That is, we should talk about enforcement of accountability, that is, penalizing the civil servant if things were to go wrong from the civil servant's aloofness, indifference, or apathy. So you could say, we are not specifically mentioning it, but try to understand it. We are actually recommending a, you could say, a mechanism of carrot or stick. To be very frank, a mechanism of carrot or stick to enforce empathy among the civil servants. This was all on apathy among the civil servants, what negativities it can lead to, and how to change it positively, how to alter it positively. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.